Now let me set the scene for you. You're at a local restaurant with your family, and everything is going perfect. The steak cooked to perfection, and the kids are behaving in a responsible manner. When in an instant, everything changes. A man dressed in black, carrying a handgun, shouts inside the restaurant. Everybody put your heads down. Empty your pockets. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I will if I have to. Then he shoots a couple rounds into the ceiling to get people moving quickly. He then heads to your table and notices the jewelry your wife just received as a gift and demands that she hand it over. Now she argues and pleads that he doesn't take it, and while this is happening, your kids are scared and screaming, and all of a sudden, from the shouting and excitement, the gun goes off, and what would you do next? The story I just described happens all too often in our country today. What would you do in an instance like this? What if there was a way to stop the entire thing from escalating to that point? What if you had a chance to fight back? Well, you have the option to fight back and protect your family. It's called the Second Amendment. According to the Wex Legal Encyclopedia, the U.S. Constitution states the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is our American right to be able to protect our families from matters that are unsafe. Now the question a lot of people ask is, why should I carry a firearm? Well, according to the Women's Self-Defense Institute, the average 911 response time is a little over 4 minutes long. Now that's a lot of time to wait for the police in an emergency when you need assistance right now. Now this is a statistic that was taken from the U.S. Justice Department. Now the same U.S. Justice Department states that the average encounter with a criminal in any manner is just under 90 seconds from the time they ask you to do something to the time you comply to the time where it's over. Now that makes you think, what could I do to protect myself for 4 minutes? Another question a lot of people ask is, well, what's the likelihood of this happening to me? Now, it seems highly unlikely to ever find yourself in this situation that would require self-defense. But in our day, in the age that we live in, the likelihood of this happening is far more realistic. According to an online blog called The Blaze, they did a survey of all 50 states and added the data to find that you are 1 in 25,000% of a possibility to be involved in a firearm crime or a firearm-related crime. So this is a crime being taken where you are in front or around a firearm. Now, to put that in perspective, that's a pretty realistic odd. Now, if you were to look at the example for the National Lottery, you are 1 in 175 millionth of a chance in winning the lottery. Now that seems more unrealistic, right? Seems like it's going to be a lot easier to have to encounter someone with a weapon. And that's why I would want to be prepared, and I would expect you to be prepared. Now, people ask a lot, what is a concealed carry permit? Well, a lot of people in our country who believe in owning and carrying weapons are required to obtain a concealed carry permit or a permit to purchase a firearm. This is a state-appointed license that will grant you to carry weapons in concealment in away from school buildings, federal or state property, and airports. Now, the reason behind the conceal and carry permit is to obtain this permit, you have to go through a state-mandated training course that would allow the applicant to understand firearm safety, laws, and learn how to use a firearm. Now, the question I always ask myself is, why would people who have to take the time, pay, and learn to obtain a permit if they were planning on breaking the law, right? They wouldn't. They would just illegally purchase a weapon and do the crime. No person that takes the time to get a gun permit through the legal channels is going to act in a legal manner. Now, I'm sure there are certain circumstances where that could happen. Now, what is the proof that concealed carry works in our country? Now, in the United States, we all know there's 50 states. There are only 5 states in the U.S. that do not allow their citizens to carry a legal, obtained firearm. Now, I could name off all 5 states, but I've decided to choose one that's closest to me, which is Illinois, the home of Chicago, which in our day and age is arguably the worst crime-rated city in the country. Now, is that a coincidence that taking away gun rights caused more crime? Well, let's check it out. According to recent data taken after Illinois banned guns from their civilians, gun homicides in the city rose by 61% between 2015 and 2016. Now, that helped make the gun homicide rate in Chicago particularly huge compared to similar cities. The rate was 25 per 100,000 residents in 2016 compared to 14.7 in Philadelphia and just 2.3 in New York, according to an online statistics website, npr.org. The reality is gun laws are put in effect to help keep guns out of the hands of criminals. But if you really think about it, if criminals followed the laws, why are our jails so full? If meth is considered an illegal substance, why is it the #1 drug that is addicted to per capita? You know, the liberal media has often thought, well, why don't they just take guns away? Well, what would happen if you actually took our guns away? Personally, I don't want this to happen because it's just history repeating itself. Now, the liberals in our country have a mindset that if you were to take the guns away, that the gun violence would all of a sudden go away as well. But it has been proven that this approach will not work. We all remember the Battle of World War II and how the Nazi regime was taking over Europe and surrounding countries. The problem with the whole thing was that during the uprising, the German government had been gradually declining gun ownership and was in the process of taking all firearms away from citizens. Now, this is a passage I found from a book from President-elect Ben Carson when he was running for president. He wrote a book called A More Perfect Union. Carson wrote that German citizens were disarmed by their government in the late 1930s, and by the mid-1940s, Hitler's regime had mercilessly slaughtered 6 million Jews and numerous others whom they considered inferior. Now, through a combination of removing guns and dismantling deceitful propaganda, the Nazis were able to carry out their evil intentions with relatively little resistance. He also wrote that this was a quote from Hitler himself: "To conquer a nation, one must first disarm its citizens." That to me is an open and shut case on allowing the government to control my rights to protect my family. Now, in conclusion, based on the facts and the data that was just given to you in the past few minutes, I hope it helps you confirm that being a licensed gun carrier can help prevent crimes and keep yourself safe. My hope is that you take the data I shared with you and you can evaluate whether or not you can make the decision or choose to carry a firearm to protect your family, or to at least understand why people do carry weapons to protect those closest to them. Thank you for your time.